place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I am your host, Asher, and our guest today is Jodi. And we get to talk about the dream, the needs, what we need to think the world feel. And we have our co-host today is Queen Lav, hailing from St. Petersburg, Florida, right? Where are you hailing from, Jodi?
Yeah, hi everyone.
So I am actually directly across from Lav on the East Coast in Fort Pierce, Florida.
Fort Pierce.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, Jodi, it's all about you today, my friend. It's all about you
Oh,
today. You get to tell us what you specialize in, how you adding value to the world, and who you being a hero to, and we're gonna have a conversation around the dream, my friend. Let's talk about the dream.
okay. All right. So a quick introduction. My name is Jodi Riley. I am the founder and owner of Innovant. We are a organization, grant writers that specializes in working with nonprofit organizations. So we don't do any for-profit, any businesses. We do strictly work with nonprofits. I have a team of 3 grant writers and 2 other employees, and we've been around since 2016, although sort of a part-time thing for a little while, and now it's been the main headliner in my life since about 2019. Other than that, I also founded a travel group for women. So we travel all over the world twice a year, volunteer in different countries. That's really fun. That's called Expedition Humanitarian. And I live, like I said, in Fort Pierce with my, I have 1 daughter still at home, 1 daughter that's grown, and my husband, and we have 2 giant hound dogs. So that's my life. And some beehives. So that's kind
So
of it.
beehive. Okay, you the beekeeper? Who's the beekeeper?
Yes, we are beekeepers. We've been doing that for a while too. It's interesting. They're nice. If you're gonna have farm animals, bees are nice because they don't. There's not a lot of fecal matter to clean up with bees, right? Like with horses, with cows, there's quite a bit of that, and there's none with bees. They just kind of take care of themselves. Very nice.
Wait, I heard that the sting of a lot of bees will help with your immunity system. Did you experience that?
So my husband thinks it helps with like arthritis, but I
Yes.
don't like being stung, so I would rather just take some ibuprofen. Like I'm not. So people use immunotherapy for all kinds of things, and I just prefer to wear the bee suit and not get stung at all. So that's
Fair
how
enough.
that goes. Yeah, definitely.
So can you tell us how, because you said this company started in 2016, can you tell us why nonprofit organization, or why did you start that?
Yeah, so we'll go way back. We have a little bit of time. So when I was young, I had some issues growing up. Both of my parents suffer from substance abuse addiction, and I faced a lot of hardship and ended up pregnant as a teenager before I graduated high school. I had my older daughter, and because I was young and I was sort of like at risk, an at-risk individual, or maybe we'll say at hope, I needed a lot of support and help to get on my feet, to get my life going, because I had a child at that point. And I really had to turn to a lot of nonprofit organizations to do it. So I worked with so many organizations that helped me, from anything from like food to support for parents learning how to be a parent, to making sure I finished my education, to helping me get a job, clothing, like whatever I needed. Some nonprofit organization was always there. So when I started my career journey, I really felt like this is what I want to do. Like I want to do what they've done for me because it means so much, and I want to be on the other side of that relationship. So I started my career in nonprofits, and throughout my journey, I worked in education, I've worked in human trafficking, in relationship violence prevention, in workforce development, youth development, all kinds of different situations, homelessness prevention, all kinds of nonprofits. But in 2016, I was working for a large program with the state of Florida through state funding. And all of these smaller organizations that we partnered with kept coming to me and saying, like, hey, we did this project, we wrote this grant together, and you did a really good job. Do you think you could help us with this little grant? Or like on the side, can you help us write this grant? And I was like, man, sure, yeah, I can do this on the side. So I was like spending, my regular work week, and then like every weekend I was just like writing grants for all these smaller organizations, and I just fell in love with it. So I did it on and off for a little while, but you know how like you're always scared to take that first leap. Like leave your job, leave your health insurance, leave your security, what you've known your whole life working for someone else, and start a company. And that was terrifying. So it took me from 2016 to 2019 to like make that leap. And my husband was really the one that pushed it. He was like, hey, look, I got the insurance, like, just like, you can do this. So I did, and I love it. It's grown exponentially, and I never thought that I would, be in a place where I have employees and we're working with 40 nonprofits a year in 8 states and 2 other countries. Like, at this moment, that's where we are, and it keeps growing. So it's great. It's been a great journey. I love it.
Wow, what other countries are you working with?
So right now we have organizations that we work with in Kenya and Guatemala, but we've worked with organizations in Nigeria. We work with organizations in the Caribbean. So it's just been kind of all over. It changes, based on their needs and what's going on in the grant world.
You're helping them with grants from their government or from United States government, or
mostly it depends.
Or donors,
yeah,
local or from the United States?
So like kind of all of the above. We will help with any grant application for any entity. We do some government grants, but we do, especially for organizations in other countries, a lot of private foundation grants. So there's kind of like, there's a few different entities that give grants. There's private foundations, there's corporate grants like Coca-Cola, for example, or McDonald's. And then there's state grants, a lot of times local grants like your local United Way or Children's Services Councils. And then there's federal, which are like the bigger grants. And we do all of them. We offer services for all of them. So we help with kind of it depends. Every nonprofit's so different based on their mission and their geographic location that we just try to help wherever they need it with whatever grants they're working on. We're flexible. We have the experience on our team to be able to do that, which is cool.
Here's my curiosity.
Yeah.
Because I can write, but I haven't thought about the process of what you do. But I'm curious about what is that main obstacle that people run into, why they come to you to write grant because they can't do it themselves. What's that main obstacle they run into?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the main obstacle is time and focus. So when you're in a nonprofit working every day, like fulfilling your mission, making sure that all of the pieces are in place, like an executive director, for example, at a small or medium nonprofit has so many hats to wear, as they say, like with work that they do, that it's difficult to find the time to write a grant because you really have to focus and concentrate. You have to shut off everything else that's going on and sort of lock yourself away and focus on what you're doing. You can't be pulled in 30 different directions and be, going back and forth between emails and things like that. And I think it's really a benefit. Our services are such a benefit to nonprofits because we're structured that way. We're structured as an organization to close out the noise and work on just their grants. And then we are able to send that to the nonprofits and say, hey, it's all done. The executive directors, here, this is completely done. We need you to review it, and then we'll get it submitted or help you get it submitted. So I think that's our main thing, is just taking it off their plate and giving them back time, and not just time to manage their business. A lot of organizations have come back to us and said, you gave me back my weekend with my family, or you gave me back time, time that I needed in the evenings to just decompress or whatever. Nonprofit leaders are so overwhelmed. And I think that's really like the benefit to having us, is that we just give them back their life. We really do.
No, that's interesting, because I'm thinking about it, because if I think about the people that actually start nonprofit, or people that want to do something, want to physically do something for somebody, but then they don't understand the process of writing the requirements to meet that whatever criteria it is for them to get that grant. But then they're doing everything else on the side plus this, and you're like, well, I don't have the time to write. So you can save them a lot of time doing it. And I'm curious to know, like, so what are some of those vision that you've seen with other people? We're talking about a dream today. What are some of those big vision that you've encountered with these people that want to do certain things? And you're like, oh, I'm going to help you write the grant for this to get the funding. What are some of those big vision you've seen?
So that's a really fun part of our job, is like hearing from organizations who are like, I do this. And it's something you may have not even realized was a need in your community, but once we start to get entrenched in what they're doing and started to write their grants, we realize, like, oh my goodness, this is an amazing thing. We have organizations, we've worked with organizations that do wildlife rehabilitation. So like when an animal is hit by a car, or and injured in some way, they rehabilitate wildlife and a lot of endangered species. That isn't something I was necessarily aware of in my daily life until we started working with them. We had an organization that deals with infant mortality and cases where parents lose a baby, and that was absolutely heartbreaking to work for, write for, but also really needed and really important because at that point we're speaking to the clients, getting information from getting their story, and really like realizing if it hadn't been for the organization that we were working with and writing grants for, that family wouldn't have had maybe the funds to take care of the services for their child that they had lost, or whatever the case may be. It was just, that was a really difficult one, but also really rewarding to be able to help those families that really needed it. And then we have other ones, like we have a equine therapy, so it's like horse therapy for kids and kids in foster care, and they're super fun. They have all kinds of like farm animals, and just a really fun one to write for. Lots of education. We've seen some really cool stuff over the years, and it's always encouraging to see how nonprofits impact communities and people, and we get to see that all the time, and we get to help them do that because when we bring money in, their impact just it just goes so much further. Super cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. Asher, you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah. So no, I would get to my mute button. A little background noise just now. But yeah, Jodi, thank you so much for that, because I'm curious about this process itself, because I have a couple of folks that was thinking about their nonprofit. I kind of hear about nonprofit all the time, and people are like, oh, we're gonna start a nonprofit, but then it's so much work, like so much that includes the nonprofit part of it. So it's one thing to start it, but it's one thing to have the money to run it, to operate it. And you're saying that that's where you come in. You find money for their purpose. And that's incredible value, because yeah, I mean you like the engine for that, really, because you the financial the lifeline. Because what the money, they can't really do a lot of work. And so I'm curious, so what are some of the places that you'll get funding from, if you can share that information, or how do you find out the requirement for that organization that provide the funding?
Yeah, so how we find out about funding is like really kind of complicated. And so the first step of this is that there's like three, so nonprofits are kind of like a stool, right? And there's three legs to their stool. And if you take one away, usually a stool will fall over, right? So the three like legs of funding, of financial stability for a nonprofit, are grants, donation, and earned income. And a lot of people don't realize that those are so important. And the size of those aren't equal. They don't have to be equal. Like some organizations get more grant money and some organizations are heavier with donors, but they're all necessary and important to ensure financial stability and sustainability going forward. So to find the grants, so we don't help with donor management. That's up to the nonprofit to build those relationships, and it's up to them to bring in earned income through merchandise sales or sales tickets to their events, or however that looks. But for grants, where we find them is we pay for subscriptions to funder databases, and there's quite a few out there. We subscribe to 4 of them, so that we can go in and search for those grants. And that's another huge value add to nonprofits that we work with, because if they had to subscribe to those funder databases, I pay about $2,200 a year for access. The nonprofit would have to assume that cost. And honestly, they're not using the databases all that often. We do, because we work with a multitude of clients, but a nonprofit who subscribes, maybe only in their, once a month would be a lot, maybe once every 3 months to pull a list of grants. Whereas they can just contract with us to do what we call prospecting, or looking for the grants, and then they get a curated list of grants that are specific to their organization, which is really kind of cool. And a lot of organizations that even have an internal grant writer, a grant writer on staff, will still use us for prospecting because it's such a value add and they don't have to spend the money. So that's kind of how it works.
Wait. You said there's like a grant pool, like a location where you can subscribe and see all the grants that are posted?
Yep.
So interesting.
Sort of. So there's some caveats to that. It's mostly corporate and private foundation grants that are posted there. There's not a lot of local grants. So there's not a lot of government grants in there. Sometimes they pick up a few, but for the most part, we then have to do the next layer of work, which is go to grants.gov. That's the site for federal grants. to the state's websites for grants or each state department to look for grants, and then look for local funding. So there's a whole, that funder database is just like the tip of the, it's just the icing on the cake. There's a whole layer under there.
Wow.
So it's complicated.
And your husband was like, Jodi, I think I got the rest handled. You can go take off into this apartment. Go make this business work. And he set you on this motion here. You're doing it. So congratulations to you, my friend. Sounds interesting to put your skill to work.
Thanks. Yeah, he's very supportive, so I'm lucky.
So if I had to ask you a question. So since you've started this business for being a grant writer and this journey, so what's been the most rewarding thing for you so far, just been doing this work?
The most rewarding thing actually happened kind of recently. So of course, grant writing and securing funding for worthy nonprofits is really great, but real sustainability comes from them understanding the grant process and having that training to move forward. And what was happening was a lot of times nonprofits would come to me, like especially new ones, and they would, we really need help, and they couldn't afford it. And so through some partnerships with some local funders here in Florida, I've been able to provide training to those smaller nonprofits so that they can learn how to do some of the things that a grant writer would do on their own until they can afford to hire a grant writer, right? So like we're empowering them, and this is the beautiful part. We have a no wrong door approach, meaning any organization, no matter the budget size, can come to us and get some help, no matter what. Whether at some level, we have help for them. And I love that. I think that's probably the most rewarding thing, is being like, you did not come to the wrong place. We're always the right place. I love that.
Actually, it's funny how sometimes you start with one thing and then it takes you into another thing. So right now, the training piece of it, just imagine that piece of it, the training piece of it, where you get to connect with people and show them exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then they can figure out, okay, when can I afford you? I can't afford you right now, but I know where to go next time. Right. And so okay, so then so you go to a lot of so how do your typical day work out? Let me ask you that question. How your typical day run?
There's no typical day. I wish there was a typical. Now, actually, I like the variety, but so it just depends. I mean, I have days where I'm just on the computer the entire day reviewing grants, looking at budgets, fixing things, and I barely talk to anyone. And then I have other days where I'm out in the community talking to all kinds of nonprofits. Once a month, in partnership with a local funder, I lead a session called Coffee with a Grant Writer, and anywhere from like 12 to 20 nonprofit leaders show up and just can ask me questions. It's a free event. So again, we have this no wrong door approach, totally free event. And that, like a day like that, I can, talk to 25 people in a day. So I have a good balance. I feel like I have a good balance of like introvert days where I don't see anyone, and extrovert days where I feel like I'm running for political office from all the people I've talked
to. Sounds like my days. Do they have to pay for your services before, or they can pay after they get the grant and maybe spend some of their money on your services?
That's a great question. And we clarify this all the time. So our services have to be paid for, and not necessarily, they have to be paid for when our work is complete, like when we've written the grant, not necessarily when they're awarded the grant, definitely not when they're awarded the grant. But so we usually do like a deposit and then last payment when everything's completed. We cannot accept payment out of the grant funds, meaning like they call it contingency payments, because it's unethical. And that's like the Grant Professionals Association and American Grant Writers Association both have it deemed as unethical, because what could happen is, let's say I'm writing a grant for you and I really want you to get this grant. You really want this grant. So maybe I decide, hey, if I don't embellish a little, if I don't say that you're going to do all these wonderful things, I may not get paid for my work. So the problem is that grant writers, not me necessarily, will never be, but grant writers would embellish on their grant application and then get paid for the grant work because the grant would get awarded. And then the nonprofit was left holding the bag of trying to complete the activities and meet the goals of that grant that were never attainable for them. They didn't have the capacity to do it. So that's really why they got away from that. Plus, you know, everybody deserves to be paid for their work, right? Whether or not it's awarded. Grant writers don't have a whole lot of control over that. What we have control over is putting together a quality application, but you never know what's going on with funders, right? They may, especially like private foundation and corporate funders, there may be someone on the board that experienced something like, let's say, for my wildlife rescue organization, maybe they hit a bunny with their car the week before, and when we put a grant application, they're like, "Oh my goodness." They're still feeling guilt from that. Like, oh, I'm going to fund this one because I did, I feel really bad about the bunny that I hurt. And other times they may say, you know what, I don't think wildlife rescue is important. I'm not funding this. So a lot of times it comes down to funder personal opinion or different things like that grant writers have no control over. So I think that all of the professional organizations for grant writers just kind of came together and said, like, hey, this contingency payments aren't fair to anyone. So grant writers just get paid for the work that they complete.
Awesome. Thank you for explaining that. I guess my next question is then, if they hire your services, of course, it's not guaranteed who will give the grant, but do you have a limit of how many applications are you putting out there? Is it like, don't worry, we'll get you one, even if we apply for 50, you will end up getting one? Or it's like, oh, we didn't get any, so.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. There's none. So that's also one of those things we can control. Like if a nonprofit is founded with a really great mission, right, and a really great vision, and they're filling a gap in community need, and that's a really important thing. Like, for example, if in my town there was a lot of homeless people and not any shelters, and an organization came in to fund and wanted to start a shelter, that they would be filling a huge gap, a huge need gap, and then they would probably receive quite a bit of funding. One of the challenges that we see is, like, for example, like dog and cat rescues. Sometimes they have a harder time getting funding because there's a lot of dog and cat rescues in cities. And so it just depends on, it's kind of out of our control. It just depends on what their mission is, if they're filling a gap, how they've done in the past. So like their performance in the past, if a youth organization only served 10 kids last year and they were supposed to serve 100, they're going to be looking at a rough go for grants in the coming years. But if they were supposed to serve 100 and served 200, it's probably going to be a better outcome for them.
Are you checking these criteria before choosing your clients?
So we do, but again, like that no wrong door approach is really important to me. So when we have a client that comes to us with these challenges, like we didn't meet our metrics last year, or we had some financial issues, or we started our organization with this mission and then realized that we were competing with 10 other organizations in the same city, we sort of change the trajectory for them and put them into our coaching program. So that program, it's called Heart and Head. It's all about leading a nonprofit with your heart and your head. And it focuses on getting your nonprofit perfect, kind of ready for grants, right? Perfect on paper, perfect from an operational standpoint, and really ready and poised to accept funding from grant funders and from private donors. So instead of saying, no, we can't work with you, we say, hey, you're a better fit for our coaching program. You need some grant readiness. And that program is membership based. It goes on and on and on. And we offer so many benefits to it, like access to our online courses, access to digital templates, all of these tools that can help nonprofits get stronger.
Oh, great. Thank you. I didn't even know about the second service. So you're like one-stop shop.
We try. Yeah, it was really important for me to not have to say no to anyone when they come to us. I want to say, this is the path we suggest for you. This is the path, this is the path, and get them to where they need to be.
Are you
Jodi,
thinking to have your own nonprofit organization eventually?
So we've got the beginnings of one. We haven't fully filed yet. But our travel organization, not Expedition Humanitarian, right now is just a group, a kind of informally organized group for traveling. And so we've definitely thought about, I say we, I mean me and the other ladies who kind of founded it. as together, really. We've started to think in that direction, but I'm so busy helping everyone else's nonprofit, I haven't really had time to file my own.
Maybe it's a future project. Sorry, I should go ahead.
Future project when I retire.
No, it's okay. I was thinking about we mentioned the school piece, the Jodi's Grant School or something like that. I know what it's called. What your organization called?
It's our organization is Innovant, and that's just the Innovant Academy. And
Say it
it's on
again?
our website, Innovant Academy.
Say that slower. I'm sorry.
Oh, Innovant Academy.
Innovant.
Yep.
Innovant Academy. No, I like this concept. There's so many ways of looking at this because in America, this nonprofit is really big. Like it's a big thing in America. Like not a lot of countries have the same stuff like we have here. I don't think Canada have the same kind of big nonprofit stuff that the American do. But it seems like it's a good business to get into or a good business to start because there's so many people that are doing it. Because I remember me and Lai, I think we thought about a nonprofit before. We was like, we're gonna start a nonprofit. But then we start looking to all the requirements. I'm like, man, this is a lot, right? You need all your board members and all these other stuff you need to put together. And then you gotta figure out to organize and then you gotta figure out to find funding for it. And there comes Jodi. Hey, Asher,
Yeah.
I can find
Yeah,
money
you have
for
to
you.
have the right people in place. Now,
Yeah.
so we are meeting the right people, right?
Yeah, no, it's we are. That's what we do here. We meet the right people.
Yeah,
And so like,
exactly. You need coaching. That's it. That's all you need.
yeah. So tell me about your school, by the way, if you don't mind sharing. If somebody listening right now trying to understand exactly how the school part of your stuff work, the academy piece.
Yeah, so we've had a grant writing course called Grant Writing Genesis for about a year and a half now, and we added another course called Nonprofit Board Member Bootcamp, and that's so that board members and nonprofit leaders can learn about board functions, because that becomes a barrier to receiving grants when your board's not running the way that it should. So we've got those two courses. And Grant Writing Genesis is kind of just like an overview of grant writing in general, and gives some really great tools for like a newer grant writer. So we've had those two courses for a while, and then we just about 9 months ago added digital downloads, which are things like budget templates, different documents that a nonprofit may need for the grant writing process that they can download and use our templates and our examples to craft their own. And those are low ticket items, very, very affordable, like $10, that a nonprofit can access help very quickly and for not a lot of money. So those have been available for a while. But the feedback I kept getting from nonprofits was like, but I need to talk to you. I need to understand this concept. I need you to explain, this more. And they had specific issues with their organization. So that's where the membership program came from. It's membership-based coaching. They get access to me, once a month of individual session to go over whatever's going on with their organization, and then a group session so they can connect with the other nonprofit leaders in our membership program and learn from each other and build relationships, which is great. Plus a lot of other tools and things that they just wouldn't get otherwise. And what I'm trying to do is eliminate the pain points of learning how to run a nonprofit and get them functioning in a way that means that they are very, very eligible and very ready for grant funding and just to operate as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So right now our academy is, like I said, the two courses, Grant Writing Genesis, Nonprofit Board Member Bootcamp, the digital downloads, and the membership program, which gives you access to everything plus some. That's kind of how it looks.
I was thinking about an intellectual shortcut here. So if you write one grant for an organization, is that duplicatable? You can just submit to a couple organizations the same way, or is it going to be totally completely separate, different from if I write a package for this one, it won't fit the other organization?
So sometimes you can repurpose content. Like, for example, there's like evergreen content in a grant, which is like your organization's mission. That's going to stay the same. Every application that you write, that's going to stay the same. But each funder has a different application, different process, different documents that they request. So it would be cool if we had evergreen content that they could just repurpose over and over again, but it's not the reality, because, like, for example, I was working on a grant yesterday for a program that had a 2,000 character limit on one of the questions. Well, that client has another grant application that's due for the same program, but the character limit for a similar question in the other application is 500. So now I have to take a 2,000 word narrative and trim it down to 500. And so that makes it, those types of things take a little bit of time, especially being concise is really difficult for people and sometimes challenging for us too. So it's not just cut and paste ever. And the other thing you have to be careful of is, writing across programs. Like you may be applying for one program for this funder and a different program for another funder. There's all kinds of nuances in what they ask for. So we don't often get to do a lot of duplication.
And I have this other question.
Yeah.
So put the writing aside. If the thing is written up properly, what is the other big obstacle or opposition that often people, if they just go inside of it blind, they won't even know unless you're a person that attack this thing every day that you would come into?
I think, well, one of the things I think that it's got two kind of answers to it. I'll go with the first one is budget. So some organizations, and I think some organizations are very aware of this, but grant budgets are one of the most difficult pieces because there's a certain way that they have to be done. And it's different for each funder. We create an Excel spreadsheet and that's a template and it can be used across applications. Some have their own templates, they have to change everything, but understanding grant budgets and how it works and how it has to look is, I think, one of people's biggest challenges. That one. The other one is that we're going to talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to writing, AI, right? So AI, oh my Lord. Okay, so when it came out, there was this huge panic from grant writers about oh my God, we don't have jobs anymore. That never happened because AI is large language learning software, right? Or learning, software, I guess. So large language model software. And what happens is it learns from other stuff on the internet. So it doesn't know anything about your specific organization. So what I see from organizations is, and a lot of organizations that are now our clients, they were like, oh, AI, great. Writing all their grant applications with AI, turning it in, and then getting immediately rejected because AI was spitting out a very generic, very sort of bland, boring to read, not heartfelt application. And I think there's becoming more of an understanding now from nonprofits that AI is not going to write your grants for you. It's very much still a human process. And I think we're probably at least a decade away from AI and large language models understanding and being able to think in a way that will produce a grant application that's submittable as is. Right now, they're not.
So so that's when you'll pivot towards a nonprofit organization in 10 years, maybe.
Yeah, well, I still think it's going to take management because AI won't do everything. It maybe writes the grant, but it doesn't manage it. It won't track, and do the reporting for you. It's not going to do, some of the things that you still put together all of your supporting documents, pull all those, and review all of those. There's definitely limitations. We may be doing more grants at that point if we're able to use AI to write grants, but there's an issue with plagiarism there, and there's an issue, there's all kinds of ethical considerations. So I think it's far in the future for us to worry about that. And, who knows, maybe I'll retire by then. We'll see.
Well, here's where my mind going, because I think I was listening to the podcast. It was talking about the scare around AI, and people was like, well, AI is going to put people out of a job, and I don't think it's going to replace that. I think what AI is going to do is going to replace people that don't use AI out of a job. Because if I partner with AI and I use AI to do the stuff, it's going to make me way faster, way smarter, way more efficiently. If a person that doesn't use AI at all, guess what? We're going to outwork you because the AI is going to help me finish this job way faster. But it still need that art from the human perspective, kind of put into that process, because you got to see it from the human perspective still. But as far as putting words on paper, very fast.
That's a bad news for the old school. Sorry, Jodi. That's a bad news for the old school people like me who doesn't want to partner up with AI.
Well, so here's the thing, the challenge with AI right now, a couple challenges, is that funders are at a place of frustration because what's happening is a funder may put out a request for grant proposals, and they would get maybe 40 applicants, right? Because people had to take the time to write the grant and really want the grant to do it, to make the time for it. Now they're maybe getting 200, 250 applications that they have to weed through to figure out like which applications are going to go forward. It's taking a lot of staff time in it. And while maybe AI maybe put someone else out of a job, it's adding so much work to funders. And they got frustrated. Because it's annoying on their half, like on their part, right? Like if I am offering $200,000 to support an organization and you're turning into me something that a machine wrote for you, and you couldn't even take the time to like put a heartfelt story in there about your clients or something like that, like you couldn't be bothered. It's insulting to funders. Mm-hmm. So what they've started doing is using AI detecting software to eliminate applications that are written by AI right from the jump. Yeah. So we're like, for us, we even started adding like a service because we realized that this was such a neat, like this was happening to nonprofits. We were saying, all right, you write your application and then we will review it for you and tell you if it's going to get flagged by an AI detecting software or, what you need to do to change it so that it is not an issue going forward. And we've definitely run into some clients who are like, what's the problem? What's the issue? The other issue is that, if you use an external source with any document, you're supposed to cite it. So you're supposed to cite, if you're copying it directly from AI and putting it in your application, you should be citing like ChatGPT or whatever you're using. And so if you don't cite it, it's getting flagged by AI detecting software, and they're basically saying, hey, this came from somewhere else, it didn't come from you. So that's been a big shock to the world.
Have you used the other software called Perplexity? Are you familiar with it?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah. That one, so no, ChatGPT is pretty good too, but that one, Perplexity, that one gives you citations, like cite all the sources that you get the information from. So it's in there too.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so that's a really good one too. So I kind of use that one as well. It's really very useful actually. I was like, oh my God, this is needed because you're writing papers like ChatGPT give you information, but doesn't tell you where he's getting the source from.
Yeah.
But that other software actually do. All the documents, all the study that you're getting the information from.
Yeah. Well, I know there was an issue with ChatGPT in the beginning, is like it would quote sources, and then like when you went back to those sources to like verify, it wasn't the right source. Like it was completely miscited, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, like what are we doing?" So, but you're actually like technically what the like Grant Professionals Association Code of Ethics says about using any type of external source is that you should be quoting or citing that source. So if you use ChatGPT or Perplexity to write your grant, you should be quoting where they got their information plus that like this information was written by ChatGPT or whatever, like citing the actual AI site, which to me, I wouldn't want to do in a grant application because the funder then is definitely going to know that and probably look the other way at your application. So that's
you have to have like writer skills as well, Jodi?
What kind of skills?
Like writer skills?
Yeah. I mean, and like, here's the thing. AI is useful to understand a subject for us. So like, if you want me to write a grant about shore erosion, right? Like beach erosion. I don't know a whole lot about how that works. I have a vague idea, but I can go into ChatGPT and put in a prompt like, why is beach erosion prevention important in Florida? And it's going to say beach erosion prevention is blah, 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 give you all the bullet points. And at least then I can deepen my understanding very quickly and kind of a summary way. And that to us is very beneficial because we have clients coming from all over the place. We don't always have a complex understanding of what they're doing. So we can get information very quickly and go, okay, I understand, I get it now. Like I know what we're trying to write for. So that's been kind of nice.
So see, here's my strategy. ChatGPT is my thinking buddy.
There you go, thinking buddy.
And it helps me think, and then Perplexity definitely helped me to really write. Like Perplexity, I think is better than ChatGPT in a certain way.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's really good actually. I started using it a few months ago. I'm like, man, this is good because my challenge was citation piece of it. But now this thing connects me to that. But it's one is thinking, one is writing. It works. One is thinking, one is writing. So I need those in my repository. Those kind of help.
Yeah. I really like Google Scholar too. I know it's not necessarily AI.
Google Scholar?
Yeah. To find sources for information, you can put in, articles on, like, we'll go with beach erosion again, articles on beach erosion, and it will pull up all kinds of articles for you and provide the correct citation, and I really love it. I love that.
Google, say that again.
Great.
Google
Scholar.
Google Scholar. Oh yeah.
Yep. That was a good one.
Listen, we are both in the writing business. I'm my journey is to write a lot of books. 86 book by my 86th birthday.
Whoa.
So I'm going after that task of writing, but it's gonna be story driven. It's not gonna be study driven. So story driven is easy. I just kind of work on how to really tell the story properly. And maybe later on I go into like some kind of other thing, but right now it's just all about the story for me. So I'm focused on that part of it. But your work is detail and data driven, some forth and so on, kind of like too. So you gotta really have your citation properly. So yeah, seems like a lot of research. Were you always into this kind of research stuff, this kind of work? Like I'm curious about how do you fell onto this planet right here, right now?
So I've always been a decent writer. Like since, third grade, I remember like winning awards for like essays and poems and things like that. So I've always been very good at expressing myself with written words. And in fact, like my husband always jokes that like whenever I'm upset with a situation, that if I send an email, I sound like an attorney. So he's always like, don't send the email. They're going to freak out and think that like an attorney wrote it. So I've just always been good at it. And I fell in love with nonprofits because of the support and the help that I got from them when I was young. And so it just kind of meshed together. And when I wrote my first grant, I'll just tell you the story real quick. So I was working for the state agency, and I was overseeing a workforce development program for at-risk youth, or we say at hope, right? At hope youth. And so we had some kids in some really difficult situations, homelessness, multiple children before their 18th birthday. I mean, just really difficult things going on, disabilities, just really a lot to face and to deal with. And I was getting frustrated because we were federally funded, and federal money comes with a lot of rules about how you can spend that money. So I had a young lady, a teen parent in a small rural town near me that needed to go to work, but in order to go to work, she needed childcare. And the state or the federal money that I had would not allow me to pay her childcare stipend. We're talking about $25 a week was what she needed to get her through till she got her first paycheck. So we needed to pay $2 of daycare, or 2 weeks of daycare, $25 a week. We're talking about $50. I could not do it. And I was so frustrated with that, not being able to buy a bike for a kid who didn't have transportation, not being able to pay an electric bill for a kid whose lights got shut off, like whatever the situation was, that I tried to quit. And my boss said, no, you're not quitting. Like, this is not how we deal with problems. You need to figure out another way. And I was like, I don't see another way. And she's a fantastic grant writer. And she was like, have you asked for the money? And I was like, well, I have a federal grant. I can't get, like, yeah, the money's right there, but I can't use it for what I need to use it for. And she was like, no, you're opening the wrong door, right? You need to find another door to open. And I was like, okay. So a local bank had put out a grant. It was just a little $10,000 grant. And I contacted them. I talked to them about it. I told them what I needed. They encouraged me to write it, wrote it, won it. That $10,000 like changed the directory of my career, or like the trajectory of my career. I was like, I love this. I could change lives with that. All kinds of kids could get jobs because I could like buy the things that they needed and like cover their bills for a little while until they got their paycheck. These kids went to work and it totally just changed lives. Then I was addicted. Then I was like, oh, I love this. Plus, like, I'm competitive by nature. So it was like, it worked out really well. So then I couldn't be stopped. And from there, it went from a $10,000 grant one year to like, $35,000 the next year. And then we got a $300,000 grant. I put all kinds of kids and all kinds of work programs through that. And it just kind of grew and grew. So yeah, built all kinds of community partnerships, connected nonprofits. It was the time of my life.
You want some money, Jodi gonna get you the money.
That's right. I mean, if you have a worthy program and you're filling a gap in your community, and you're passionate about it, I feel like that shines through on your application to funders. And in the way that you write, in your program outcomes and what you're doing, I think that you can feel it on paper when it's being done well.
What's the biggest thing a nonprofit can do to make it easy for you to write a grant that really make that emotional piece stand out for you? What's the biggest thing they can do?
Biggest thing they can do is make sure that they have clients telling their stories. And this is I mean, they're always like, oh, do you want my client to write it down? And I'm like, no, make a video. I need video content. And I love it when nonprofits have a YouTube channel with like multiple videos of them explaining their programs and talking to clients, because the people that are going to tell your story the best are the people that you helped. And I think that's like the biggest thing, is like ensuring that those clients that they have a space to tell their story and how you help.
Wow. I felt helped today by Jodi. I learned a lot. I learned a lot because I had interest in like putting a nonprofit together in the future. But then when I was researching, I was like, man, there's a lot to this thing here. And I saw the fundraising part side of it with some other friends that I have. I'm like, it's a lot of work here trying to get people to give you money. And trying to ask people for money is like the hardest thing. So somebody was saying like, you don't ask for the money, right? You kind of do something different. I'm like, what? So what do you do differently? Because people don't want to give you money, you ask for money direct. So how do you ask for money? Maybe that question I asked you, how do you ask for money from a donor in a simple way?
That doesn't work with donors though.
Yeah, so it's a little different. So donor stewardship and donor relationships, I help coach nonprofits on how to do it, but their approach is, it's different. It's dependent on the person. It's an individual approach. So we coach nonprofit leaders on how to come up with their strategy based on their personality strengths, but we don't actually do it. With funders, it's a little bit easier with grant funding because they're asking specific questions on their application and giving us the space to do the ask. There's always a question that says grant request amount, and we get to put a number in there. And when you're speaking to donors, you don't get to do that, and that's hard. Or you're trying to figure out in the conversation where to say, hey, we need 10 grand for a new roof. And that's really difficult. Yeah. It's a hard thing. Like, remember, like in school, like doing fundraisers and like you gotta sell chocolate or sell Girl Scout cookies or whatever, like that's hard enough. Like hitting people that are coming out of the grocery store, like, hey, do you want to buy cookies? Imagine asking someone for $10,000 to $20,000. Like, it's not easy. It's an art. There's an art.
Or hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. So as far as that goes, yeah, I'm not a super salesy person, so it's never been my strength. But grant writing is nice because they just ask you for the information you want and you get to put it in.
I want to hear you say this.
It's like,
yeah, exactly.
I want to hear you answer this question for me, even though I might figure you're gonna say it, but I would love to hear you say it straight up. So what's the best part that you notice when your client work with you, that they see and when you accomplish a task for them, like getting them funding? What's the best part that you love about when they achieve that?
When they get funding, I think the best part for us is that well, two things. It's hard to say one. Sorry, I'm not following directions. So a really awesome part of it is getting that email forwarded to us, like, hey, congratulations, your organization's been awarded $25,000. And they share that with us, and the client's just like, woohoo, in their email, like 1,000 exclamation points. They were like, oh my God, that's so amazing. We're so excited for you. A lot of clients will text us or call. Sometimes they just call to share that with us, and they're so excited. I mean, we had a client that got a small amount of, not even that much money, maybe. I think she got about $15,000 and called us crying. Like, that's a nice feeling, and she's like, this is going to change kids' lives. And you're like, okay. And then, we're crying, and it's like a whole thing. That's lovely. The other part I love is seeing the outcomes. So we follow all of our clients on Facebook. They're all on our business Facebook, and we get to like see what they do with the money. And that's been really nice. Like even like the small ones, we had a school, an elementary school client that got a small grant for a little garden, and then they posted pictures of the kindergartners gardening. And I was like, this is my mission in life. Like, my God.
It's beautiful. It seems like it's so rewarding. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Yeah, I love it. It's definitely not an easy thing. It's definitely a niche skill set, but for me, I'm super passionate about it, and I try to make it as unboring as possible. It's not like the most exciting topic, but.
So if somebody is listening right now and it's like, wow, Jodi, totally love the way you laid out your process right now, and they would love to work with you, how can they do that?
So the best way to to reach us is through our website. It's innovantgrants.com, and I'll spell it. It's INNOVANTGRANTS.com. So innovantgrants.com. And there's a way to set up an initial consultation through the website. Our phone number is there, and we're totally accessible for clients.
Second question. What is your biggest takeaway from this conversation today?
My biggest takeaway,
giveaway.
Giveaway? No, I think takeaway. I think takeaway. I loved your questions. I think that it's really nice to be able to explain what I do. And I just love the questions that you guys ask, and kind of how like we dive a little bit deeper into like why I'm doing what I do. So I think my biggest takeaway is that you just reinforced that I'm doing what I was meant to do. So thank you for that.
Okay.
And that you had great fun on our podcast.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, you guys are super fun. So there's that too.
Yeah, it was the last time we tried this, the thing got cut off on us, but today we get to kind of really get you full circle around here, get you a good hour of conversation. And so closing question for you is, we all got them. So what is that one thing or two thing when people do it just drive you crazy at work or home?
At work or home, two things that drive me crazy. I hate dirty floors. Hate it. My God. And we have two huge dogs. So like the Roomba at our house, like our robot vacuum, it runs all the time. I am like, my husband's like, thank you, but I have a problem with it. Yes, I have. It's bad. I hate that at home. And at work, I think I really don't like it when people talk down to others. It really bothers me via email or however, especially via email though. I feel like that just really bothers me. And sometimes I'm CC'd on those emails or whatever. I'm like, ugh. Like, I think there's always a kind way to deal with things, and maybe also something going on behind the scenes that you weren't aware of. And I think that like picking up the phone or contacting someone privately to understand the situation without trying to create embarrassment, that I think is a better way to deal with it. So just any kind of, that type of passive aggressive behavior at work really, really bothers me.
Interesting. What about you, Lav? Any thoughts?
Not too many. I got lost in all the good information that Jodi gave us. I liked your last answer, because we ask every podcast, we ask the guests what bothers them, and you're very specific, and I like it. And I did not think about it, but it definitely bothers me as well when some people think that they're superior.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah. All right, this was fun. Thank you, guys.
Yes. Jodi, enjoy doing what you're doing, my friend. It's been a awesome ride listening to you talk about your passion right now, the thing you specialize in, you're adding value to the world, and the folks you've been a hero to by doing what you love doing. And it's good to finally meet somebody. I'm just kidding. But it's good to meet somebody that loves what they do, because sometimes you meet people that, yeah, man, I don't like what I do, but I have to do it because,
Not on our podcast, though.
Not
Everybody who comes here, they love what they do.
They love what they do. They love what they do.
Usually, if you want to talk about it, it's because you love it. Like, if you don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I know. It's great. Okay, any last word before we close out?
I want to thank you both for this conversation and for everything. I appreciate so much being a guest on here and spending time with you guys. It's so great. You both are a lot of fun, and the questions were great. So just really appreciate it.
All right,
Thank
Jodi.
you, Jodi.
Thank you for the generous use of your time too. And for the folks who are watching, another one for you. So we'll go check Jodi out, and that making an awesome week.